Actually, it's a crime-fighting technique that involves this. Well, in New York City in the late 1980s, we had a terrible crime problem, mostly because of the cocaine situation, and drug dealers were killing people right and left. Over 2,000 people a year were murdered in New York City alone. Astonishing number. So the police department in the city came up with a concept known as the broken window technique, and it's simply this. The theory is that if people take pride in where they live, if they do things like fix the broken windows, if they paint the hallways, if they replace light bulbs, they will suddenly get a sense of community, and they themselves will discourage crime. Last year, I think, although it's still a high number, there were roughly fewer than 200 murders in New York City. City bigger now than 20 years ago, but only 10% of the murders, largely because of the broken window concept. One should not think that my book is about sociology. It's a Lincoln Rhyme thriller, the character from the Bone Collector. The book is typical Deaver in the sense that it has a lot of twists and turns, big surprise ending or two, but it has also some esoteric, some very interesting information on data mining, on the loss of privacy, on identity theft, and these are all blended into this concept of the broken window. Known as data mining, and I wish I could say that I had made this up completely. No. Everything you read in Der Täuscher about data mining, about the collection of personal information, both by corporations and by the government, is 100% true. Of course, my book takes place in a very, I guess I'd call it a typical Jeffrey Deaver pressure cooker. Everything is condensed. But the actual corporate structure of what these companies do is 100% portrayed accurately. Actually, Der Täuscher came out of a personal experience I had about 4 years ago. I was the victim of some identity theft. It was not that serious. I didn't lose much money. But what did happen was I lost my credit for almost 2 years because the information about me went into the computer. And even though it was sorted out by the credit card companies, some computers didn't get changed. It was still on my record. It took 2 years to get that straightened out. Well, it was more of an inconvenience than anything, but of course I got the idea. Somebody who has access to all this personal information, but doesn't use it to buy a stereo set, as my thieves have done, but used it to get close to a victim, to seem to know all about their lives, and then to murder them. And then to use the personal information he learns from their data records to frame a completely innocent person. He's committed the perfect crime. As consumers, we need to be very cautious about the information that we send out. In America, if we want to get a discount card from a grocery store, fill out information about yourself. If you do not check a small box, usually on the back page of that application, if you don't check the little box saying, "Do not share my data," everything you buy, a record of every single thing you buy, is sold to these data mining companies. I am very circumspect about the information I give out. I'm very careful with my credit cards. I'm very careful with my passcodes. I change them frequently, and I don't use a name that could be associated with anything, actually. I use random numbers. I take the little credit card vouchers. If you get a piece of paper signing the second receipt, you keep the first yourself. I make sure I always take that with me. Little things like this. We can't be too paranoid. Paranoia is my job, instilling that in the minds of my readers, because I want them to turn pages. Ernest Hemingway said, if you want to send a message, go to Western Union, meaning that fiction is not really, for genre fiction, the sort of fiction I write, storytelling, does not really have as its goal enlightening people. I want the story to move from beginning to end as quickly as possible. But it is very important to give depth to the characters in the book. So what I've done is create in Der Täuscher, one character who owns a data mining company, and he is very passionate about using data to protect the country. He's very patriotic. He lost friends on 9/11. He is the voice that data mining might do something good, as it in fact has done. In America, children can be given a watch that has a chip in it by their parents. The child ever gets lost or kidnapped, within 3 minutes, the police can now find where that child is. That thanks to data mining. Well, on the other side of the coin, I create a character who is from a privacy organization. To follow his view, that child would never be rescued. I don't really take a position one way or the other, but I simply show what each side could do as accurately as possible. I was a journalist and learned to type many, many years ago, not looking at the keys. And when I actually write the book itself, and I should just preface this by saying I do an outline, a very long outline of the book. I spent about 8 months doing that. It's a very long, detailed process. I blocked out in the outline maybe 80 different scenes. I then look at what scene it's time to write. I read that. I say, okay, I've got the characters now, sort of like an actor. And then I either shut the lights out, or if I'm elsewhere, if it's not convenient to do that, I will close my eyes and imagine myself in the scene. I think there is nothing like a good film to up the emotional engagement of the viewers. And that's what I try to do in my books. These are not intellectual efforts. These are emotionally engaging experiences. Not saying it's high art, it certainly isn't. It's entertainment. But I want the reader to be grabbed by the lapels on the opening page and race through experiencing every scene as intensely as possible. I have the strangest nightmares in the world that have nothing to do with the books. For instance, I dreamt I was, I think it's a variation on the apparently fairly common dream about not preparing for a test. Well, I also breed and show dogs, and I enjoy that. It's a very fun avocation. But I had a terrible nightmare. I woke up sweating that I was at a big dog show, like Crufts or Westminster. And for various reasons, the judges who were judging the big grand prize, the best in show, had fallen ill, and there was no one else there to do it but me. And I know a number of breeds of dogs. I've owned German Shepherds, I've owned Poodles, I've owned Briards, right now a French herding dog. And I know these breeds very well, but there are recognized in America for competition about 120 different breeds. So my nightmare, I don't want to belabor this, but I was terrified, worse than a serial killer dream. I was in the middle of the ring. My job was to pick the best of roughly 100 dogs that were running around me, and I knew nothing. I didn't even know what type of dogs these were. The fact is that some of them looked like goldfish with legs was a little bizarre. So whether that meant anything more, I guess if I had a psychiatrist, he or she could figure that out. But no, my dreams really have nothing to do with the books. I did nothing. I did nothing. I was not strangling her. How would you, in German, how would you say innocent? Ich bin innocent?
Unschuldig.
Unschuldig. Unschuldig. Okay. Good.
Schuldig is guilty.
Oh, guilty, not guilty. Okay,
Yes.
good. Unschuldig. Okay. Ich bin unschuldig.